Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We know there are a few more people that are about to join us, so we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Thanks very much for being here. Si hay alguien que necesita traducción al español, aquí con nosotros tenemos Miguel. Ustedes pueden sentarse con él y él puede traducir. Gracias. So we'll get started. Thank you very, very much for being here. Thank you to the members of the community, members of county council, members of the staff who are here. And of course, thank you all members of the Board of Education for coming. My name is Tony Gaspar, I'm the superintendent of schools. It's a pleasure to talk with you tonight. So I apologize if you've heard this presentation once before. It may sound very familiar. But we're going to go through a document that's called the Superintendent's Budget Narrative. It's now the Board's Budget Narrative. And tell you really about where we stand as a district, where we're headed as a district, and really what our financial needs are. So we try to be very open, very transparent about the money we get and how it's spent and what our needs are for next year. I want to give you just a quick overview of where we stand in the process. So what's happened so far, there's multiple steps. What's happened so far is I have presented a recommended budget to the board. The board has adopted that budget, but there's still a lot of time and opportunity for you to have an impact. Because of the budget will then go off to the council. There might be some changes at the council level, and then that will come back to the board as a lump sum, and the board will have to decide how to spend our finite amount of funds. So you're here tonight to listen, but also give some input on the budget, and the board and I look forward to hearing from you. So we're going to go as quickly as possible. I know this isn't always kind of the most engaging of topics, but I'm going to be hopefully as engaging as I can about a pretty complex thing. So you've got all of these pages in your handout. I'm not going to read them to you. Just please know that we take this process very, very seriously. We do a long process for every budget owner. That could be a school principal, a school principal or a district-wide program leader, department leader, has to present a budget to the superintendent. There has to be priorities in that budget. And I expect that each one of those people has talked to their team before they propose a budget to me. So I estimate that somewhere around 150 to 200 staff members have had a voice in the budget so far. So this is not just my work, certainly not. And it is a process by which we try to get lots and lots of input. So we're going to look quickly at where we stand as a district. Lots of charts and graphs. I love charts and graphs, don't you all? No? So where we stand, daily attendance, we're on the rebound after COVID. What you're going to see in a lot of our charts in these other lines, you can see them in the handout at the bottom, is what I'm constantly doing is I'm comparing us to the other school districts in Connecticut that are most similar to us. Used to be called DIRG I, it's still called DIRG I. Those are the urban districts in Connecticut. So I think they're the most appropriate comparison, so you'll see a lot of those there. So when we come to DIRG I, we were about right in the middle for attendance, and we're on a nice upswing thanks to a lot of hard work by our staff and a lot of cooperation from families. Four-year graduation rate, you'll see that line is not doing so well. It is a concern for us, we're already working on it. But I would bring to your attention the fact that the data is kind of old. It takes a while for the State Department to give us those updates. We know our own data, we know we're going to see a rebound next year when we're looking at this. We know the graduation rate is something for us to work on for sure. So the next are, how are our kids learning? The state test that your kids take, our kids take in grades 3 through 8 is called SDNB. We've talked about it, we've been very frank for a very long time. New Britain has ranked last in the state on those tests. I'm happy to say that in one of the two tests, we're not last. Now, it's not something to totally brag about, maybe not being last, but we're making good growth and we're on a good path. So what you can see here is on the left are kids in 3 through 8 that are reading. We're closing the gap. And I feel like we're going to see some nice growth there in the coming year. In math is where we're no longer last. You can see we have a nice, strong uptick in how well our kids in those grades are reading. Yeah, we're still last in ELA, but we're last by the least amount we have been. Again, that's a funny statistic to talk about, but we're making up ground and we're closing the gap to other districts like this. SAT, this is the statewide test for high school kids. It takes place in grade 11. You can see the heavy brown line, the maroon line is us, so you can see we've made a really nice rebound. We're even doing above where we were pre-COVID. So good growth there on SAT reading and writing. Math, there is a statewide downward trend, and we're seeing that trend too. Among districts like us, we're right around the middle, right? Again, we know we have work to do there. You'll see my style when I present to you all is I don't believe in hiding data, I don't believe in not showing you the tough stuff. I'm going to show you the stuff we celebrate and the stuff that we're worried about all at the same time. Student enrollment. I heard there was a rumor out there that enrollment was down. It is not true. We're getting closer and closer to having 10,000 kids in this district once again. So our current enrollment is at 9,900 students. And that has been growing really since about 2020-21. We're kind of on an upswing there. But it's important to remember that we have different kinds of students with different kinds of needs than do many other school districts. So, and multilingual learners is one of the ways we look at that. So it's just under 20%, 19.1% of our kids are multilingual learners, meaning they need some extra help in English. English is a language that they are learning. What's important to know there is, in one way or another, maybe in a very small way, maybe in a bigger way, all of these kids need a little bit of extra service. They need a little bit of extra resource, they might need a little bit of extra staff. So as the multilingual learner population goes up, so does the need, which means we are not only legally required to provide more services, we're of course morally required to provide more services to those kids too. So as the multilingual learner population increases, you can see we're on a parallel to the state line, but much greater. It's important to realize that the district is having to provide more services. And an easier way to think about 19% is just about 1 in 5. So look around the room now and imagine this was a class. 1 out of every 5 of us would be a multilingual learner. Somebody who needed that level of extra support. Magnet school enrollment continues to increase along with our overall enrollment. You can see that here. This is going to get really nerdy for a second. And I'm so happy to have Rep. Sanchez join us tonight because he could probably set me straight if I don't get it right. So you can see the cost, right? We pay a tuition every time a student goes to a magnet school. The district pays a tuition to that school. You can see that it increased with the students, and then it dropped. That dropped in the current budget year because there was state legislation that helped school districts. The state legislation said that our tuition would be frozen at 58% of the previous year. That law is still in place, but we're waiting for confirmation that it's going to be funded. So we're hearing different things, of course, we're hopeful that it will be funded, but this is a major impact on our budget. You can see the millions of dollars that we pay in magnet school tuition. Students with disabilities is obviously something else that we work on hard every single day. And of course, we want to make sure that we're providing the best services that we can with our resources for those students. You can see the very strong increase in the number of students who have what we call an IEP, an individualized education plan. And it's increasing at a faster rate than the overall population. Not only is the total number of kids who need some special service increasing, the depth of service that they need, each of those children, is also increasing. And the way for us to measure that is to look at our specialized programs. So these are the programs where students would have the most adults in the classroom. So the ratio of kids to adults would be the highest. In places like Bridges, which is mostly targeted at students with behavioral disorders of one kind or another. Key, which is targeted at students on the autism spectrum. And Pathways are students who are medically fragile and sometimes also may be diagnosed with Down syndrome. So what I want you to notice is, not only does the overall graph go up, but these programs, the way that they're increasing. So while the overall growth was 11%, Key was up by 48%. Bridges by 20, and Pathways by 70%. Again, these are programs we have in-house. We keep these programs here so we don't have to ship kids out. But sometimes there are kids who have such a substantial disability that we must do what's called an outplacement. There's been a growth in that too. Even though we've increased our capacity in our specialized programs, we're still seeing a greater number of students who have a substantial disability that we can't serve. Those kids are then assigned to what's called an outplacement, which is a private or public school other than our own that the students go to serve their disability. What's important for you to know is that's really costly. We do what we can to avoid it. We'd rather keep the kids local. We don't want them riding 45 minutes on a bus either, both ways. But when it is the right placement, we do outplace kids. A single child outplaced can cost between $100,000 and $250,000 per child per year. And you can see those outplacements have increased by almost double, at 91%. So again, we try hard to limit that. We prefer to have New Britain kids stay in New Britain for a lot of reasons. But you can see that cost is really increasing quickly. This is our calculation of what special ed cost is compared to the full budget. And again, of course, we want these kids to have the services that they need, but it's an important part of the budget for us to discuss. In the current year, our local budget, our allocation from the city of New Britain, is $128 million. Of that, $57 million is allocated to special education. So more than a third of our local budget is currently having to be allocated to special education. Again, this is with a lot of people working really hard to give kids the best services we can, but they're also quite costly services. This is just a quick look about our current class size. You can see it varies across the district, and that's because we have neighborhood schools to the degree that we can keep it that way. It varies up and down, and it varies by grade, just to show you where we're at. This is current staffing and projected staffing. We always like to show this in a couple of different ways. You can see this by unit. I'll translate the numbers for you if you're interested. So, independent administrators, that is self-explanatory. Local 51 are our school and district administrators. Local 871 are our teachers, of course. Local 871 are our teachers. Local 2407 are our paraeducators. Local 1186 are our custodians, school secretaries. It's kind of a hodgepodge of the group. And local 18 are our managers and other such staff. So you can see how they're currently allocated and we're proposing to allocate them. And this just shows that by money. Again, we try to be totally open and transparent about where the money comes from and where it goes. Moving on, just to take a quick look of how staffing has changed over the years. You can see some declines. You'll see some strong declines in 23, 24, and in the current year across those categories. That's because the federal COVID money went away. Prior to my arrival here and during the height of COVID, the district hired approximately 300 people with COVID money. Those people were doing good work and working hard, but unfortunately, when the money went away, the positions had to withdraw. We were able to save a few of those positions, but in general, those positions went away. I'm asking for some additional positions, and the board is asking for some additional positions, and I think you'll find predominantly they're about trying to serve our students with special needs, or students with disabilities. So we're recommending that keeping one assistant principal. This was one of the positions that did get added with COVID money, and we tried to take it away, and we found out that school just needed an extra assistant principal, so we've added that back, and I'm recommending keeping it. Other than that, you'll find everybody on the screen is about special ed. Board certified behavior analysts, para-educators, school psychologists, social workers, and special education teachers. Now, in a funny way, well, it's not humorous, but what I've said about this budget, I actually said the same thing last year to the council, for the council members that are here. As your superintendent, this is actually kind of a boring budget. I would love to be, proposing this amount of money, say, we've got these awesome ideas for this new program, and it's going to be great for kids. The budget and the additions that we're asking for are really, it's just about keeping things the same, and adding the special education services that our kids need. Here are the funding sources. Again, I won't go too deep into this. Give you one really nerdy fact, though, and that's right here. So the general fund is really the part we're talking about tonight. That's the allocation that the Board of Education gets from the city of New Britain. It comes to the board as a lump sum, and then the board and I need to decide how that lump sum gets spent. It's pretty important to know, though, that the city receives some of that back from the state. And in our case, it's about half of what the city allocates to us comes back to the city in what's called ECS, Educational Cost Share. It's also important to know, if you look up and down these columns, that really it's just half of the general fund that impacts the local taxpayer. Now, we all pay taxes, of course. We pay state and local taxes. But basically, every other funding source that you'll find here, half of the general fund and every other funding source that you'll find there is a state source or a federal source of funds. And we did receive confirmation that the president's memo about shutting down federal funds has been rescinded. So that was about 24 hours of panic for me yesterday. I'm sure for others of you, like Paulette, that was 24 hours of panic as well. So that's what the funding, this is the revenue, this is where our funding comes from and what it looks like. Here's where it goes. Again, I'm saying this a bunch of times tonight, but I think it's important that we actually dig into the weeds just a little bit. The right two columns in this chart, we're on page 15 right now, are important. I'm not going to read them all to you. I'll just do one row as an example. And you're welcome to call me, email me with questions. I'm happy to talk to you more if you have further questions. So if we look at teachers' salaries, we can actually, a better one to look at, let's look at tuition special education outputs. In the current year, it's budgeted at $6.6 million, but it's accelerating at such a rate, it's actually, we're currently over budget in that account. We're budgeting based on real student need, that budget needs to be 10.2% next year. A requested increase of $3.5 million. That means just that line, just the outplacements line is going up by 53%. But it makes up 2.5 8% of the requested increase. Our requested increase is 11.42%. It's a lot of money. But it's our job to represent the needs of the students and to justify that. So that's how that chart reads. Again, I'm sorry if it's too kind of nerdy in the weeds, but we think it's a really informative chart. Similar down here to other local cost changes. This pie chart is just the increases. Just the increases. So if you take a look at insurance and benefits, the top right hand, the purple piece of pie. This is increases that go to the insurance company, and I like to say that money just goes poof. It just goes away. It just goes to the insurance companies to handle benefits for our employees. Just that increase is $2.8 million, 2.9. That's not for better services for kids. That's not for some brand new program that I would love to implement. That's just the cost of paying insurance. Mostly, almost completely beyond our control. And you'll find that around the pie here. Transportation and bus monitors, well, that's a 5-year contract. Those increases are already built in. That's not, that 2.4 million, that's not for more buses. That's the same amount of buses with the additional cost assigned to each bus. Similarly, special ed tuition that we just talked about, magnet school tuition. There's a couple of things in here that we have control over. We still do have to buy stuff. We have to buy floor wax and dry erase markers and reading supplies, but you can see those are really the smaller wedges. For me, this is the most important slide because I realize the board and I were asking for a big amount of money. And we know the political implications of asking for a big amount of money. We know. So it's my job as superintendent to ask myself and then ask myself, well, is what we're asking for reasonable? Is it reasonable? So what you have on the left is a list, an abridged list, of all the school districts in Connecticut and what they spend per child per year. It's called per pupil spending. Right? And I've taken out some rows so we can fit it all in one column there. So you'll see the district that spends the most per child is at the top, Sharon. A tiny, tiny little town way out in the west part of the state. Sharon spends $49,000 per child per year. Tiny, tiny little town. I've heard they've got 3 or 4 or 5 kids in your class. Okay? And they just choose not to regionalize. That's their choice. This year, the district that spends the least per child is Merritt. And by the way, I didn't say so, but this is all public data. You can go on the state website and get all this for yourself. Merritt spends the least at $15,296. We're just a little bit up from that. Meriden is ranked 165th. We are ranked 160th from the most recent data. So we spend $16,814 per child per year. So this is part of my asking myself, is what we're asking for reasonable? And then what I've done over here is compare us to those other towns. And I ask myself, if New Britain were to choose to fund each New Britain kid at the same level that Hartford chooses to fund each Hartford kid, what would it take? This is not with grants, this is not with anything else, this is just the local share that comes from each of these municipalities. So if New Britain chose to fund each New Britain kid at the same level that Hartford chooses to fund each Hartford kid, what I do, any math teachers in the room? Okay, Laura, Amy, you can correct me if I got the math wrong. Because what I do is I take Hartford per pupil, and then I subtract out ours. So in other words, Hartford spends $6,327 more per kid per year. That's from their local tax base, not grants, not state, local tax base. So then to make a comparison, I take that $6,000 and I multiply by our number of kids, not by Harvard's number of kids, because they got way more. So just to get a feel, so if you take that, they spend $6,300 more per kid, multiplied by our 9,900 kids. If we were to fund each New Britain kid at the same level Hartford funds each Hartford kid, you would have to add $62.6 million to our budget. And these are those other districts, the state median, New London, Wyndham, New Haven. I think New Haven is the example here. If we were to fund each New Britain kid at the level that each New Haven kid gets funded, you'd have to add $34.6 million to our budget every year. That's per kid per year. And if you wanted to fund this at the Bridgeport level, you would take away 1.8 million. Just to be fair, actually, the data and how it works. So this is an important slide for me, and I spend a lot of time putting this together because you have a right as taxpayers to ask, is what the board and the superintendent asking for, is it reasonable? Every taxpayer should ask that question. Often comes into play, and I'll have this ready by the time I talk with the council, is, well, do they have more ability to pay? And Hartford is ranked far lower than we are in what's called ability to pay. So another nerdy statistic, it's called AIMR, Adjusted Equalized Net Brain Risk per capita. And Hartford has a lot less ability to pay than you. This is just what that looks like in a different kind of chart in your handout. So this kind of takes us through the expenditures and where we think they need to go. Our assessment here on the left, 89.7%, we think, are the costs that are either driven by the law, such as special ed, or driven by contracts, such as employment, utilities. Did your utility bill go up this year? Our utility bill is in the millions, so when you add 3, 4, 7, 9% to a utility bill at your house, it hits us at that same rate. And so we're left with just about 10% of our budget is really fully within our control. Most of it is driven by contracts or legal obligations. Again, things like special ed and employment contracts, transportation contracts, utility contracts. So that takes us to the end, and then the board and I will be happy to hear your questions and or input. We have our current budget is in the middle there, $128 million. I would be remiss if I did not thank the council and the mayor for their support over the past 2 budgets that I proposed. After a long stretch of flat budgets, we've gotten good support. And we want to say that publicly, we've gotten good support from both the mayor and the council over the past 2 years. And we're proposing $142.6 million budget for a difference of $14.6 million. Proposing an $11.4 million budget is something we take seriously. It's a big ask. We know that. But our job is, without politics, to present the needs of the Britain. We know that the needs are increasing, enrollment is increasing, and it's our job to present the most honest budget we can, while still being very fiscally responsible. Right? There's not a lot of fluff, if any fluff, in this budget. There's no pet projects. So we do take that seriously. So in closing, I do want to say once again, thank you to our state legislators, local government, parents, staff members that are here with us tonight. I want to say thank you to the members of the board that were joining us tonight. And now, if you'd like to speak, all you got to do, I think, it's a pretty small room, you can just stand up, raise your hand. We'd be happy to hear your input or questions. Actually, we do have a sheet. Ms. Fox, Paulette Fox, you signed up to speak to me.
I mean, short, I thought I was going crazy. I really think as a community partner, as a resident of in the Britain and operating OIC for 40 years, it even work. The kind of people we are dealing with is a problem. And most of the after-school programs have youth with special needs, behavioral health, Bobby knows I'm already talking with him about some stuff. The only thing I would encourage you is, to keep that after school bus. We got you. And I can't wait to share this with parents. And you guys know, people that's from the great parents don't see the big picture. And I think
Okay,
they
as many copies as you want, that's fine.
well, yeah, because they're not here, that's okay, I got you. I know I go for 100 kids, so they tell the parents. But I just want to share with you, again, I hear you, Bobby and I have talked, I called Rosa before, that impacts just about every nonprofit in Connecticut, but I'm over in Rocky River. So I would encourage you, from what I've seen in 40 years of our youth, it seems like we're going back. They need the special ed, the Bridges program, I'm working with Tyler Birdie, the expulsion kids, they got skills, but they need to honest. And I'll shut up on that.
Thank you. Wayne Pierre, Wayne Son, speak. Welcome.
Well, I'm looking back on what Paul said, I've been working in this district now, so my 16th year. We have school programming. I'm also a former educator, works in the Market School District. But I've also been a part of this community for a while. One of the things that I noticed, the special ed component is really driven up costs, and it's driven up the amount of people that we have to allocate to make sure that those who are successful. But I also have questions about students who are maybe on the other spectrum, who are, looking to get into more advanced programming like the Med Academy. I tell everybody everywhere that what's happening in the Med Academy is phenomenal. It's basically be a blueprint for what's happening around the state. Is this going, with all the changes, are there any changes that are happening with the Med Academy or with the tech ed side of it? Because I work with school districts in California, Texas, New York, Boston, and it's still a priority for them. We have Med Academy, and it's great, but there are so many students who need that opportunity also. Is that something that's going to increase, or are we looking at things increasing when it comes to all the CSD side?
Thanks for your question, Mr. Garrett. Thanks for being such a ardent supporter and really participant in the school district. A lot of it is purchased for, and you see it in not just the Med Academy, but all 4 academies at the high school. Thankfully, there's a federal rate that supports a lot of it. That's the Perkins Fund. You'll see it in our pie charts there. So we're not anticipating much of a drop off there. I wish I could say I had more local funds to put towards them, but as I said, we're really at a bare bones basis with the local funds. Because you gave me a segue, I will celebrate something though, which is kind of connected with the academies, but not exclusively. So a big push for me is high school kids getting college credit while they're still at school. And that's really another success that maybe I should have made part of the presentation. And again, I thank Mr. Pierce and the members of the high school staff that are here now. I asked them to have yet another ceremony last year, right? No high school principal, nor superintendent, nor board of education member wants to go to yet another celebration. But we did one just for kids at high school, who were in high school, earning college credit. Last year, we celebrated 593 kids earned some form of college credit in high school last year, and it's a priority for me to continue to increase that. And we're doing a lot of work, my team at central office, we're in close contact with CCSU and the community colleges. Dr. Toro at CCSU and Dr. Meduco at the community colleges, both are really interested in that. Would anybody else like to speak or ask? Mr. Catanzaro.
That's small. Thank you, guys. That's Paul Catanzaro, former alderman, former city employee, one quarter of the dad with the kid in the system. Actually, two, but when I first started, no longer with her. She went through the whole special ed thing. Way back in the 80s, things were a little different. It was much better now. We go through this every year. The numbers are what they are. But we need to increase it somehow. First of all, I want to say, Doc, I want to thank you and the board for that latest memo we sent out. For the security of our kids in the school. We have kids from all over the world. We don't care whether they have documentation or not. So I was really, really pleased to go over some phone calls and say, if I got to stand in front of that door, I will. But, so thank you for that. I don't care what they say in Washington. Who knows? That brings me to my, which we know. Dr. Gasper spoke about this many times. They spoke about it at the board and at the council several times. And I don't see it in here. I know it's in the special security of our building. There's no reason, I'm going to get a little animated, but this day and age, that there's not a security officer in every school. I'm not saying a cop, a security officer. Our elementary schools have nothing, except the secretary and the lockbook. Thank God nothing's happened. We had a scare not that long ago, and our police did fantastic, and so did the schools. But there should be a security officer in every school. That's about $1 million or what that might be. Yeah. It's a lot of money. Kids can't run it if they're not feel safe. Bad enough, every time something happens, they hear it on the news. When I was at this later, this last round of crap, worried about if someone's going to come to school and grab it. So I spoke to a security officer and I said this to many times. When my daughter was going to summer school, you had a security officer in one of the elementary schools from high school. We spoke every day. I said, how you doing? Busy, I'm closing doors all day. Okay, great. One day I dropped my daughter off. You noticed a car in the parking lot that normally wasn't there. He's just there for summer. He's not regularly there. But these security guards are taught what to look for. They are trained in this. There was a strange car in the school parking lot with 2 people sitting in it. So I hung around, we called the police. Luckily, it was nothing. But if you didn't see it, and it was something, who would have saw it? The teachers are teaching, the secretaries are running the school, the custodians are cleaning. Just somebody to be there, do the routine checks, check the door, check the perimeter, we have cameras. My good friend over there handles a lot of that. Thank you for that. But to me, that's such a big priority. It really is. It's not 100%, but it's something. What we have on our side, we have one of the best police departments that will get there very quickly. But, some of it is, it just might take a couple minutes to hopefully deter anybody from getting into that building, because it's a locked door, but it's all surrounded by glass. It's kind of silly. Somebody wants to get in there, and we have to be proactive. We have such a long history, not just us the women. We react after the fact. That's not true. So I know it's a lot of money, but I think it's a priority. So with everything else you're asking for. So, hey, they had more money for this, but, I've been preaching this for a long time, and I'm going to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment or ask a question? Please, Rep. Sanchez.
So at the state level, we're going through a budget year. I can tell you right now that the requests that we're getting across the board for everything from homeless, shelter, increases in money for funding for shelters, increases for special education, increases for early cost sharing grant. It's in the millions and millions and millions. So this is gonna be a very difficult year for us at the state level, because we can advocate for additional dollars, but there's another 150 state reps that are advocating for their towns and their cities. So, and then we have to, we're gonna listen to the governor's budget. It's coming out next Wednesday. Every budget that the governor has put out, we, the state reps and the state senators, have been able to tweak it, add additional dollars, subtract certain things from that budget, because we don't always agree with what the governor puts out. So it's going to be an interesting, very interesting session. But I look forward to it because I want to continue advocating for the additional dollars. Question I had with the 14,612,480 you're asking in addition. Is that factoring in what's estimated to come in from the state, $8 million?
Yes.
That's factored in.
Correct.
Okay, so you're looking at a difference of almost $6 million.
So we have factored in all of our, we're talking about the additional alliance money. And for us, because we have so many staff already in the alliance grant, a lot of that additional $8 million is going strictly to the labor contract increases that are in there for those staff. So I think afterwards we were left with less than, I want to say, $4 million out of the 8, for which we could try to offset some of the other costs. So to the best of our ability, and Ms. Alfano, who's much, she's our CFO, she's much more of an expert than I. But we think we've done everything we can to account for all of the income, all of the revenue. And yes, that's where that leaves us with the 14 million.
And I just want to thank Ms. Moreno, thank you for the information you provided me for 5001. I will be sharing that with
Anything you
the
need, sir.
commission.
But thank you for your support, Representative.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from anybody in attendance?
Hello, good evening. My name is Brenda Cardoso. Yeah, I'm the mom, future student, friend, class of 2012, I think, myself. And yeah, I work with the immigrant community here in Brennan. My question is, I'm thinking ahead, right? I'm a community organizer, so I'm thinking like, okay, what happens? Just getting ready for anything, right? What happens if we don't get approved? Right, it sounds like the parents here, the few parents that are here, the teachers that are here, the staff that's here, for the bad beat, it sounds like we want to get more money in the budget, right? So, yeah, that's the plan, or what are the chances of us not getting that money, you know?
So at this point, that's a question for the council. I'm thankful we have some council members here tonight. The best thing to do would be respectfully reach out to your council members and tell them your priorities. Because that's kind of the process we're in. First, the superintendent recommends a budget to the board requests a budget from the council, and that's where we're at this point. So the degree to which what we receive matches our request will determine what cuts may or may not have to happen. So again, I'm not telling anybody to storm a council meeting, right? Do so respectfully and calmly, either through emails or speaking at the public comment, the public participation session at the council meeting. But it's important that the councilors know your priorities, because they're certainly going to be hearing from the other side of people who have real financial challenges, and they'll say that their taxes can't go up. And that is real also. We're not discounting that, but it's critical, and I don't want to speak for the council members that are here, but it's critical that they know your priorities so that they can represent you.
Member of the council, and I just want to let everybody know that at every regular meeting, we have public participation at 7 p.m. It's the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month. We're going to meet with the board and the superintendent on May 8th as part of the budget process. It needs to be approved in June, and it is a balancing act because of the unsustainable property tax. I think we all recognize that. But I applaud the plan. I think this is your third, where you give an honest rendering. As I said, hope for the best, plan for the worst. But the council is open to hearing from parents and people who support education at every meeting, but especially as we get into the budget season. So, I applaud this presentation. I think, is this the first?
It's the first time we have such a forum, yes.
You've had this to the board, and we'll have other public hearings as well as at the meeting. So we look forward to I look forward to providing as much resources for education, given our finite resources as we can.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the board and Mr. Gasper for the presentation. I think that the breakdown shows the when, where, how, the money needs to be spent, how it needs to be spent. And I'm here in support. We have been built as a coalition. We need to invest in our generation. We can continue saying next year, next year, next year. But I'm glad that we have from the council, as we have from the state. So I'll start from the top to the bottom. Hopefully our legislature understand that they need to invest in the community, just like we invest in anything else. And then also that our city council will understand that we need to invest in our children. Especially, I'm here to support the paraprofessionals. I always believe they overwork and underpaid. They do a lot of work to assist the teachers, and we appreciate the teachers that work. Sometimes they have to be a teacher, a counselor, a priest, and medical, and a mother or a father. So we appreciate as a constituent and as a leader of the community what the teachers are doing. As la señora preguntó, she asked what can we do? I would recommend that over 9,000 students that we have here, if you get a couple hundred people, 900 people in that city council, I could assure you that you're going to catch the attention of the council, and our legislators, that our children we cannot continue to say we're going to give them a little less. I know as a homeowner, I know that, it's hard to try to get from a little to a lot. But we need to put the pressure, like I said, from our legislators down to provide the funding that we have. Sometimes we want a lot of stuff, but hopefully we get some, especially special education, like you said. The cost is high, and they're the ones who need it. So once again, I tell our families, we have to stand up for our kids, for our family, for the next generation. We already have the teachers doing their jobs, instructing our kids, and sometimes a lot of kids in an overcrowded class, just them. We have the paraprofessional doing their jobs, and those who are there. Now it is the job of those who we voted for to look at the best interest of us, to do what is in the best interest for our kids. We want education, we want it now, and I think that it's better to invest now than later on invest in the Department of Correction, which I did 20 years, or you're going to invest in something else, but you're never going to see when you cut in education.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak or ask a question? Dr. Ortiz.
So, good evening to our members of our county council, board of education members, superintendent, district leaders, to all of our community leaders as well, and our families here tonight. So welcome to this very important budget forum. As superintendent mentioned, my name is Dr. Ortiz, and I stand here today wearing two hats. As a school administrator and the president of our initiative unit, I deeply understand the weight of the decision before we regarding our superintendent's proposed budget increase. Like many of you, I certainly share the concerns we all have about fiscal responsibility and the impact of our decisions or our payments. As a community leader, I recognize that any increase in spending directly impacts our taxpayers, many of whom are already managing tight household budgets. I see our families around the school community, at our community events, and in our schools, and I understand their struggles with rising costs. I know this is not a request that is made lightly. It comes from a place of genuine need and careful consideration. As someone who walks our school halls daily, I witness firsthand the critical needs of our students. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They represent real opportunities for our students' future. Behind every dollar in this budget is a child who needs support, a teacher who needs resources, or a program that has possibilities. The proposed budget addresses essential educational resources, support services, and programs that our students desperately need to succeed in an increasingly competitive world. I want to share with you what I see every day. Dedicated teachers, making the most of limited resources. Students eager to learn, but sometimes lacking the support they need. And families putting their trust in us to provide their children with the education that they deserve. When we talk about budget numbers, we're really talking about their stories, their hopes, and their futures. As the superintendent mentioned, this is a very tight budget with no fluff. It's not a budget of new programming or services to supplement our wants, but rather a budget that sustains our needs to continue our forward progress towards student achievement. Every line item has been scrutinized and demonstrated that we are stewards of both public funds and public trust. The recent administration, with our superintendent at the helm, has consistently demonstrated fiscal responsibility while striving to provide equal education, equality education. We've made difficult choices, eliminating unnecessary expenses and focus our resources where they can make the most impact. The superintendent's proposal reflects careful consideration of both our educational obligations and fiscal and financial constraints. I ask you to view this not as an expense, but as an investment in New Brick's future. Every dollar invested in our students today will return trifold in the form of a more educated, skilled, and prosperous community tomorrow. When we support our students' education, we're not just helping them, we're strengthening our entire community, improving our local economy, and building a brighter future for all New Brick. The decision we make today will echo in the lives of our students for years to come. I know this isn't an easy choice, and I deeply, deeply appreciate the careful consideration of all factors involved. But I truly believe that supporting this budget is supporting the heart of what makes New Brick strong, our commitment to giving every child the opportunity to succeed. So I want to thank you in advance for your thoughtful consideration of this crucial matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ortiz. With that, I'm going to turn the mic over to our board president, Mrs. Marino. I will stay after the program is over. If anybody has individual questions, I'll be happy to do what I can.
I just want to go and thank you to everyone who showed up this evening to make the voices heard. It's important. It's important that everyone be aware and apprised of what's involved in this, and this is not a fly-by-night process, as Dr. Gasper has explained. It's a big number. It is a big number. But recently, I've been going through the schools and walking halls and meeting with the administrators. And I've witnessed the compassion and the diligence and care of all the staff in every building I've been in. One of the comments that Dr. Gasper and I were chatting before the meeting, this city gets a bad rap. We do. We get a bad rap. Because I will tell you, I think we have the best teaching staff, best administrators, best central office staff. And you care for the kids of the city. You prove it every day. And I thank you. Thank you. Yes, we'll be around for questions. Did anyone else on the board want to share thoughts? So for, I always have something to say. All right, so here we go. Mi nombre es Tina Santa, estimados soy la madre aquí en el distrito, one of the district mothers that just so happens to also serve on our Board of Education. And just to put it into perspective, while we speak about children in our district, and children succeeding and what they just need to be every day, please understand. All 3 of my children at Lincoln High School are spec ed in a very small program called Pathways, which is for the most medically fragile kids. They have requirements that you cannot dream of, but we are required to provide services to people. We look at that. I sit here for all of your children, for all of the investment that we make in our community, because we are trying to get the best investment in our community. So while others may be celebrating at graduation, I am celebrating things like very small milestones. And we have to repeat those things just to make sure they stick and even if they're down on Friday, we try to do. That's what's required. Staff that loves them. I am so lucky that all of you came here to show up and show out. And please share with your friends the importance of the information contained in here. Dr. Gasper is the first superintendent we've had to sit here with a book I love you. And he's actually, this is chart. Here we go. This is where we're at. He's put it right over here. I'll be at St. Mary's Church at 9:30 Mass holding this for anybody that wants to know. Okay? But for those of you who know families that could not be here in attendance, because we all know some, I did put the announcement, I did announce it, but what I want to make sure that you know is that we all know somebody who has kids at the school. Make sure that your friends see it and have a chance to ask questions, and when you do, Gasper at CSDNB.org. Okay? That's, okay, but we all want to make sure that the other families that we interact with actually see this. I interact with a lot of spec ed families. So why not? Make sure that and if they, again, the information is there. If they don't understand something, ask. That's what the administrators are here for. To be able to, again, be there for their school community. But if you have anything, please make sure that you ask it. And I'm always here to answer. I'm here to help. So, Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time. And we'll be continuing this.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your participation. I'll hang back. If you have any questions for me. We have more of those handouts here. If you want to take one home to your favorite person who likes to start your grant. Thank you.